welcome everyone to this new panel. I'm very happy to have, well, supposedly four great panelists today. I think the first thing that I will ask is for each of them to present, not only in terms of themselves, but especially also where they're coming from, what was their path to get to what they are today, as well as probably one little point that they want to talk about related to are we on the collision course. So I will just go in line of the line that we have. So I'll ask first Sven, if you want to present yourself.
First of all, I must apologize for looking a bit battered. I'm at the end of a 10-hour conference, and I'm still on the conference premises here at the KfW Bank in Frankfurt. But it was an interesting conference because it is actually dealing with the climate and biodiversity interface right now and how to upscale biodiversity in the whole discussion. But first a few words about myself, where I come from. So my name is Dr. Sven Stadtmann. I'm the biodiversity lead for AFRY, which is Scandinavia's largest design and engineering consultancy. So it's a very large company, 18,000 people, and we have a whole lot of different sectors that we focus on. So we are doing a lot of stuff in the energy sector, like plant design. We are in the process industries, not just power plants, but also just like industrial plants and these kind of things. We're doing heavy lifting in urban planning and urban development, roads, traffic intersections, and these kind of things. And we are also having a very large environmental branch where we're doing a lot of stuff with water, like water treatment, restoration planning, revitalization of rivers, but also hydropower. Also we are also working with mining companies to both for the sustainable management and planning and design of these mines, and also the operations of those. Then again, we also have like a management consulting division, and within this management consulting division, we finally have our sustainability consulting team. And in this team, I am, as I said earlier, the biodiversity lead, because we are currently consolidating a new team for biodiversity and nature-related risk management, which is like goes a bit beyond the usual permitting and environmental due diligence, environmental health and safety, but also deals with like the nature-related risks of your operations and how to adequately identify and manage them. How do I get there? This is actually a very long journey that I did. It started basically like 20 years ago in the Wadden Sea. I got first interested in nature conservation by reading a book, actually. It was called Last Chance to See by Douglas Adams, who is also the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is one of the greatest sci-fi books of all time. But the one he was always fond of was Last Chance to See, which was this heartwarming, heartbreaking, at the same time journey with him and a WWF geologist to the most endangered species around the world. And this really got me hooked up on the whole conservation aspects, and which pulled me in first as a ranger into the NGOs and into the public sector, where I did a lot of work before coming to AFRY. This was also during the time when I was a graduate student and a postgraduate student. I was more focused on NGOs and public sector. And I learned these languages to speak. But then at some point I got the courage, because obviously some people may have reservations about the private sector, but I got the courage to cross this line to actually explore and try to figure out what you can do with this type of background in the private sector, because I've realized this is a sector which has like the strongest leverage for doing some really significant change, if you can convince the people all right and convene the right messages. So yeah, that was a bit of my story, I hope. Great.
No, and I this is the interesting part, is to see that there are many different ways to get to either to the private sector or the NGO sector. So it's quite interesting. So I'm sure that we'll be able to get more insight for the participant on what it means for them. So thank you very much. Birgit, I should say Birgit and I, we know each other because of the Commission on Ecosystem Management at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. But I will leave you the floor to explain more your path.
Thank you, Liette, and thank you for having me. Thank you. Great to be with you on this panel. Yeah, for me, let's say that my path as a kid, Liette, you are right when you say that everything can lead to everywhere. It depends on how you follow your passion. So as a kid, I wanted to be a pilot, in fact, because I was seeing a lot of flight going above our village and our town, and I wanted really to be a pilot. This didn't work out. I was very curious also on always asking around, I'm seeing this herd, where is it start, where is the end? I wanted really to see the end of the herds. And in my language, it looks funny when you ask this question. So yeah, so I ended up, because not being able to go to piloting school, I ended up going to a geology. So I graduated as a bachelor in geology, and then was admitted to go and do mineralogy, because I was really fascinated about gold, about precious stones. And at that time, there were revolution in my country. So you might have heard about Thomas Sankara. And during this year, most of the students, we were obliged to stay home. They say, no one go abroad. You just stay and see how you can feed and learn and kind of fill the gap the countries is facing. So I end up doing geology, hydrogeology, and then yeah, went up to be an engineer, started working on dams and boreholes and irrigation schemes. Yeah, fascinated about water, but doing on the engineering side. It's during that time I started at private sector. In fact, I worked along like 5 years with private sector. And then I don't know, by chance, I was looking into a journal and I applied to IUCN, and I get into IUCN and was hooked with wetlands, water resources. So this really shifted my mind on to the pure engineering side to looking into the restoration, wetlands, policies. After 30 years, 8 years with university plus the private sector, I went back to the university to do a master's degree and a PhD in ecology. So yeah, that's what led me to CM, because I was a focal point to CM, but then it's what also led me to working with the Global Water Partnership, the African Development Bank, UNEP, and UNCCD, where I'm now today. Dealing with the restorations, desertification, leading one of the Pan-African initiative on the Green Wall, looking on restoration, but not only for tree planting, but really a kind of mosaic of development, green job, carbon sequestration, livelihood. So yeah, this is kind of my journey. So every path can lead to everywhere. I agree with you, Sven. Back to you, Liette.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is the interesting part. You did the flip of Sven in terms of you started with the private sector and then you moved to the NGO. It's interesting to see the possible changes. And this is what is great for the participant, is probably to realize that there are many ways that we can move in our career over time. So welcome, Noam. Glad to see you. What we are doing right now is presenting yourself, what you're doing, but also how did you get to where you are today?
My name is Noam. As mentioned, I am the director of the Blaustein Institute for Desert Research at the Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. And what we are doing here at the Institute, we're dealing with few major topics, namely water scarcity, food security, renewable energy, mostly solar energy because we're located in the desert, and ecosystem dynamics. We're focusing on drylands, I'm originally, or I'm still a hydrology professor. Did all my degrees in Israel at the Hebrew University, and then spent a couple of years in the US for a postdoc. What we are trying to do here is to do not only, but a lot of applied science, trying to look into solutions, how to create sustainable life in drylands. We know that drylands, and it's not a secret, and I'm sure that everybody here knows that, is about 40 to 45% from the earth, and the numbers are just increasing. The population growth is mostly in drylands. Desertification increased the earth volume that is covered by dryland, and there is a lot of room for innovation, new technologies, new ideas, new ways to live in drylands, new type of crops that with high resistance to extreme conditions, new ways to use marginal water and things like that. We have a lot of projects in different parts of the world. There is an interesting combination of what I would call top-notch science, which is solutions for the Western world, and also robust solutions that are more applicable for the developing countries, especially rural areas, which is totally different game. Very different needs, very different way of dealing with the problems. And I'm sure that many of you that are working in such areas know that it's totally different. So things that can be outstanding in Israel or in Europe or in Canada are totally irrelevant for rural village in Uganda or wherever. So it's very different venues. We have very international graduate school here. Right now we have about 300 students, masters and PhDs from, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 26 different countries this year, including, well, not everywhere, it's just 26 countries, but many places. Let's say that we have people from all continents. And it's very important for us to, let's say, educate and train the next generation of scientists and decision makers in our fields that I just mentioned before. Maybe that's it.
So one thing that I was asking everybody is, how did you get there? How did you become an hydrologist? Did you get the position you have? Because what is nice for our participants who are students is to figure out about how do you get there?
Wow, that's I'm not sure how long back you want to go, but you know, in Israel you serve a few years in the army, and after the army I spent a year as a backpacker in South America. My parents really wanted me to come back, so they put me in different programs in different universities and convinced me to come because I'm already registered and accepted and all that. I came back. I started to in a soil and water program at the Hebrew University. I really didn't mean to stay more than first degree. I have you know, I was thinking to keep being a mochilero for the rest of my life, pretty much. But somehow, you know, I found it very interesting, and I got an offer to stay for a master and then for a PhD. And before I understood what's going on, I found myself a postdoc. And then I came back to Israel. I had offers from different universities. And my institute, the Zuckerberg Institute for Water Research, was really just beginning in Israel, which is a very small country, but it's considered to be the you know, the end of the world. I mean, we're located in the heart of the Israeli Negev Desert, very far away from the big cities of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa. And I had offer from at least one university in the big city, and I prefer to come here. Many of my friends thought that I'm on a good mushrooms or something that I still have from South America or whatever, because it made no sense. but it was new, it was interesting, it was far away, and so I found myself here with a lot of challenges. And I think that I mean, honestly, I'm not saying that I don't have you know, rough days and things that I'm not really happy about, especially in the last 7 years that I'm doing a lot of administration. But really, every morning when I wake up, I feel good, because I think that what we're doing is really extremely important for the future of all of us, our kids, our grandkids, and I don't have any yet, but when I will have them. And I think it's really great to work and try to find solutions for the future. We have huge challenges, and I think that we really need the best brain power of the young generation to help us. And you know, I'm always joking that if we could get 10% from the amount of money that is being invested in the transition between iPhone 13 and iPhone 14 to deal with water scarcity, we could solve all the problems. And it is, and I think that our life wouldn't change if we stay in the previous version of cell phone or something like that. But it will definitely be a huge different if we find these solutions. So I think it's a huge challenge, extremely important, and this is why I'm here.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. And this is the thing, is it's always good to take a chance at one point, even if some people don't believe that it makes sense, but we never know. So I will go for Justina. Welcome to the panel, and the floor is for you.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Justina Ray. My title and position is President and Senior Scientist of Wildlife Conservation Society Canada, which is a non-government organization operating in Canada, second largest country in the world, with lots of conservation opportunity and challenges. We're affiliated with a global Wildlife Conservation Society, which works in 60 countries around the world, but are independently incorporated within Canada. I am a wildlife biologist by training. I'm also an adjunct professor in 3 departments and 2 universities in Canada as well. So I straddle the science policy interface, so to speak. So as a scientist, I work, and my colleagues do, to address scientific questions about wildlife, but that can be applied directly to policy and land use decisions. How I got here? Well, I have been passionate about wildlife and animals since I was born. I don't remember a time when I wasn't, and I lived in the 10th floor of an apartment building and didn't go camping with a family. So that love just materialized through, going to zoos and aquarium, and also the Natural History Museum, and then also through books. But I was obsessed and very concerned about the welfare of animals and from a conservation perspective. And I didn't really quite know what to do. I thought that the only avenues for me were to either be a vet or a zookeeper. But as I read and I discovered books, I heard about wildlife research. And so that was my pathway through university. And I was always very kind of different because I pursued biology, but most of my classmates were medical school pre-meds, and so I felt a bit of like a misfit, but I kept going, and I wound up doing a PhD research in Central African Republic, long story short, and which was an extraordinary experience for 3 years, studying small carnivores, but also experiencing real-world conservation issues and and the people dimensions of conservation and so forth. I ultimately ended up coming back home to lead this organization here. There's so much to do here, but I have this international perspective, both because of the organization that I work for and also because of my own direct experience, which is invaluable. It shapes my thinking every day. And in Canada, there's a great deal to do. There's a lot of opportunities still in terms of places that we haven't messed up yet. But at the same time, there are huge pressures because natural resource extraction is an enormous, part of the economy, and so there's lots of tensions that need to be resolved. So every day is both exciting and challenging. At the same time as I'm leading an organization with 50 people, and who are all passionate about the mission. So that brings also joy and challenges. I think one of the things that we're most, today the word biodiversity is becoming more and more understandable and familiar to even the people on the street. You're hearing about it every day in the news, which is very welcome. There's also rising understanding of the intersections between biodiversity and the climate crisis, plus health, and also environmental justice. All of these things are intertwined. They have very similar underlying pressures that lead to the challenges and solutions as well. So I find the last couple of years, as exhausting as they have been and will continue to be, very invigorating for sort of the rising understanding, interest in doing new things, but it's still not enough, but still it's on the right pathway. And also this intersection between understanding all these different challenges that we're facing that are very similar and need to be addressed simultaneously. Thank you so much.
This is great. And what is nice is that the four of you are coming from different angles, but you're all in some way or another trying to find solutions for the issue of biodiversity, the desertification. I agree with you, Justina, in terms of also the intricate link between biodiversity, climate change, health, and a lot of these components. And what I would like to know from all of you is how, when you look at the issue of biodiversity, especially related to natural resource development, how can we really find a strategy to help to avoid, for example, desertification, to avoid degradation to the environment, and to make sure that by the end we have a sustainable system, because we still need the material, but at the same time, how do we protect, how do we make sure that we're not getting in the path of desertification, biodiversity loss, or type of degradation? So I don't know who wants to start. Justina?
Well, I didn't mean to leapfrog over everybody, because I'm sure everybody has something to say about this. I think first and foremost, we have to understand that the way our whole system is built is for continued production, and with sort of a kind of an overconfidence that we can make our impacts less harmful, and that will each of our the impacts that from development projects less harmful, and that will in of itself be sustainable. But we've butted up against boundaries and have stretched the limits and overtaken them in many cases, and that's not really written into our economic system. Our system does not recognize that there are limits to production, and that there are costs to the environment at the same time. So I think moving forward, we have to do more than mitigate damage. We have to really focus on outright avoidance and understanding that there are absolute limits to to our footprint, both the intensity and the extent of our footprint on the natural world, and that we cannot have the full confidence that we used to, particularly in the way that our approaches, piecemeal development approaches, that we will have to hold back in certain circumstances and go for quality rather than quantity. So I'll just start with that statement, which is just which does call for something very, very different from our usual approach in most cases.
So it means especially trying to find solution and making sure that these solutions are the one that can protect biodiversity and the environment. First of all, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sven?
Yeah, thank you, Justina, for that. I think I would be happy to pick that up and add the private sector angle on that, because as Justina pointed out, our economic system is built on the wrong assumption of infinite growth in a world with limited resources. And I think one of the biggest challenges, we actually had this at the discussion today at the conference here, how do we take this up, is to make this this discrepancy more visible. And one aspect that is being currently materializing in policy and regulation developments is the concept of dependencies and impacts. So of course, we know that companies have impacts on nature, which are relatively well understood because they all have to do environmental impact assessments and check like their damage. But this is also being taken a bit further now, because now regulation requirements are beginning to ask companies the questions which are a bit uncomfortable, like, okay, what are the impacts along your supply chain? Like how far, what's going on there? So this is something new regarding the impacts and that is developing. And the other thing which is being made more obvious for companies, which is a relatively new topic, is the aspect of dependencies. So dependencies means ecosystem services. Like every business to an extent depends on healthy ecosystem services to make a living. And one thing that, which is also one of my main jobs, is make these dependencies visible for companies, trying to figure out like to which extent do they depend on it, and then show them, okay, what is the risk actually when this ecosystem service breaks away? So how much would it cost you? And this is how you get the private sector companies, both with regulatory compliance, but also return on investment. Once they know there's a risk, they can start acting on it. The main challenge, however, is, from my experience, not to overwhelm them with this topic and start doing it with baby steps, even though we know we are in a hurry, but we can't do it otherwise, because companies are just coming to terms with reporting on climate. And now somebody comes around the corner and starts talking about biodiversity, and they're just like, what is happening? And yeah, so in this context, what we usually do is, okay, let's take it a step back. We do capacity building. We give them a basic introduction on how this biodiversity is manifesting in business decisions right now, how this development compares to the development of climate policy. So we show them the parallels, and we show them that this is a regulation that is coming inevitably at some point, but it's just a few years behind climate change now. And still, this gives them a reason to act now, because to help them be prepared for that. And what we then do is do a basic screening. So we are sitting on a mountain of methodologies and frameworks and how to do biodiversity footprinting, which is super intimidating both to myself and to the clients, because they don't know which methodologies to pick up. So what we do is we start relatively simple with a basic Encore query. It's an online tool, which shows them like the basic dependencies and impacts on nature, which is perfectly fine and sufficient for many, many companies. And they're really happy with these results, because then they can see like, okay, these are our main priorities in biodiversity. These are our main risks. And this is something where we can jump in and then start developing some basic measures. And then the next step would be actually integrating these measures in their ongoing sustainability strategies, which of course companies have been having for a few years. It's just that biodiversity hasn't been that obvious in there. So this is basically the causal chain, like start with capacity building, take it slow, try to get them, try to help them relax into this new topic, and then build it up from there. So this has been, from my part at least, with the companies that we work, been the most successful strategy to make this positive impact that we desperately need.
Can I add one thing to illustrate the ecosystem services part? I mean, I think that's wonderful. For example, you know, in the oil sands, it takes 3 barrels of water to extract 1 barrel of oil, and the water is free, and the oil, you know, I need not say more.
Yeah, and this becomes a big issue, I would say, especially in many countries of Africa. And I would like probably to hear from Birgit and Noam. Birgit, I think you have your hand. So to talk about it, because in your case, you're working with the Green Wall, which is trying also to empower not only corporations, but especially communities at the same time, to avoid loss of biodiversity, ecosystem services, land degradation. So if you want to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think that Justina and Sven has already mentioned it. I wanted to share at least a few slides on how this can come together, because we cannot say we are fixing one and leaving another one, if this is agreeable to you, for sure. And show also maybe where is the green wall and how it is. I wanted just to say that sometimes we are in this dilemma on what to fix first. We are talking about climate change. You mentioned it, I think, Sven, and biodiversity loss, land use. So we have really to think about how to bring all together. And I will quote my executive secretary who say we cannot stop the climate crisis today. Wait, tomorrow we'll tackle the biodiversity loss, and then we come back the day after to say that we are fixing the land degradation. All has to be done together, and this, for example, 3 Rio Convention is trying to work toward having that one. This is what we are trying to do at UNCCD, looking into the human capital, the social capital, and the financial capital. I think we mentioned all of that, and bring land-based natural capital, talking about the soil, the water, the biodiversity, looking into land restoration to create jobs, to give economic opportunities for youth and for the population, because you mentioned the green wall, I'm coming to that. And if this opportunity is not provided to the youth, it's why they are fleeing out of their countries. So when you think about land degradation, what is the benefit of really addressing this is really to enhance the biodiversity and conserve the habitat. This is tackling already the biodiversity framework. It will help reduce the impact of drought and flood, which is a huge challenges in most part of the countries. It will help agricultural yield, minimize the diverse of migration. And migration is where sometimes will lead to problems in other countries. Not problem on the only receiving countries, but also the countries who are losing the dynamic, vibrant youth from their continent. So it's really help addressing that. You can look at into different angles for places. Where are you, from city or urban rural interface, natural ecosystem protected areas? What can we do in terms of approaches? I think we mentioned that the tools are there already. What action, what is the enabling? What is the benefit in terms of human health, in terms of water availability, in terms of food security, in terms of ecotourism and cultural aspect? What is in there for the population living within or in the vicinity of these ecosystems there? Being it a land, a degraded land, a lost biodiversity, or a climate changing to our drought or desertification. So what we are trying to do is really to address this through some different tools. The land degradation neutrality, the green wall. If you look into, I'm just taking the continent of Africa, you will see that 11 parties are a part of the green wall. I will dive into that. But most of the countries are engaged more or less into how to reduce the land degradation neutrality, how to really rebuild what is the lost opportunities, the lost biodiversity, how to restore the land to its full potential for the benefit, not only for the environment, but also for the people. So the Great Green Wall was set up really to have the objective of solving this problem. I hope you will have the opportunity to see this video, to restore 100 million hectares, to have 250,000 million carbon secreted, ton of carbon to secreted, and 10 million jobs for the youth, mainly youth and women. And you will see the green job we are talking about is, for example, transforming. We have young women in Mauritania using the seeds from dates to transform it into coffee, which is sold sour coffee, and to contribute to climate resilience and food security. So this is, for example, one of the example. We have another youth, a young girl, Salma Khalil from Chad, using art to really address the issue of environment and to raise awareness on the communities. We have school teachers in Senegal engaging in water storage, in gardening, in applying technique for restoration to regreen. So all this is part of what the Green Wall is doing. We have, for example, Seynabou from Mali, engaged in value chain on superfood from raw fruit, from fonio, baobab, hibiscus, balanites, and making really huge return of investment with 30 tons per month of capacity with some market outside Africa. And we are engaging with the different youth, from entrepreneur, activists, scientists, influencers, from Senegal, from Djibouti, from Ethiopia, to really show them how this wall restoration of the Green Wall it is. It's not only about planting trees, it's really a mosaic of activities, engaging youth from the communities, youth from the region, to show them that there are opportunities to build in their land. So I think that's what I wanted also to share in terms of the response of the questions, building on the experience from the region. Back to you.
Thanks, Liv. And this is one thing that is important, is really the question of trying to get the youth opportunities in terms of the Green Wall. Noam, I would like to ask you a little bit about very rapidly now how your university, for example, is encouraging probably the youth to participate either in the Green Wall or in any other communities to try to build on what Justina and Sven and Virgi have just mentioned before.
Yeah, well, I will try to downscale from the Green Wall, which is really a really large scale project, maybe the largest scale that one can think of. And I will go to, again, to Israel, which is a very, very small country. I mean, you mentioned that, I think Justina mentioned that Canada is the second largest country in the world. We are probably one of the, maybe the second smallest country in the world. I'm not sure if this is the second or the third, but very, very small, with very high population density, 10 million people living on 20,000 square kilometers. And more than 60% is the Negev Desert. So from the beginning, you know, making the desert bloom became kind of, you know, a big thing in Israel, and huge amount of efforts were made to make the desert smaller. So it's the opposite of desertification. And indeed, Israel is maybe one of the countries where the desert is just becoming smaller and smaller. And it sounds great, but there are some issues, or there is some price for that. And the price is related to biodiversity, for example, because it means that you have to do more and more agriculture in areas that were natural. It means that you are putting more and more fences to prevent animals from penetrating into agricultural areas, and this create huge problem in terms of the ecosystem. And you know, when you are really working hard to making the desert bloom, you don't stop to think what it means. And I think that this is a very small scale. I mean, it's not a green wall, but I think it's a good example that when we are making the desert bloom, we are paying significant price. And this is something to think about in many ways. So if we are irrigating, for example, a lot of land that was not irrigated before, and we are irrigating it very efficiently, here everything is drip irrigation, smart drip irrigation, subsurface drip irrigation. We're increasing salinity, we are changing the biodiversity, and things like that. So this is just an example, small scale example, and I assume that the folks that are dealing with this huge green wall program are considering all these issues. I've heard, you know, many lectures about it, including in UNCCD conventions, and I think that it's amazing, but it also need to be, you know, really open-minded in terms of the impact. You know, that's it.
Yeah, this is important, and sometimes we forget that. And I remember always an example from CEM of a corporation wanted to use a grassland to become a forest for carbon sequestration, but the grassland was important for indigenous people. So we have to always be careful about the trade-offs on these issues. And I think all of you in some way talk about the importance of these trade-offs. We need resources, but at the same time, we have to be very careful the way that we do it. We have, and I really like the what Justina said at one point about the limits that we have, the boundaries that we have to keep in mind, as well as the importance of rethinking the way that we even consume as human, that's for sure. But I think for the students that are listening to us right now, I think they can see from all of you that it's private sector, NGO, academics, different ways that they can in some way become involved. And there are solutions for all of them. There are opportunities for all of them. And I'm sure that probably some of them that are listening, especially from Africa, are probably going to probably already have written some of the names here to be able to say, okay, do you have something for me? So that's something that is important, is that they will get through this, I think, new connections and new ways to probably find ways to protect biodiversity, considering also how we have to be careful about what we're consuming, how do we do it, and all that stuff. So I know we're a little bit short of time, unfortunately, because I think I would have been able to continue for another hour very easily. I really enjoy it, and I really appreciated all your comments. It's really great, and I will say thank you very much, and we'll certainly keep contact, and certainly find a way to continue the discussion in another way. Thank you very much.